What's going on, guys? Welcome to Squadron Live Wednesday night. Uh, Here we are again. Wednesday comes so quickly, it seems sometimes, and I don't know. It's just always at Squadron. There's always something going on. It's always, I guess, exciting is the right word, maybe. But before we dive in too deep tonight, I've got to say. My friends down in Florida, you guys are in my prayers. All of us here at Squadron, our prayers, and please stay safe. I know many of you have emailed me and said that you were up here in my neck of the woods, and some of you are still down at your house and at your home. So wherever you are tonight, and whoever you are, please be safe. We're praying for you, and hope that everything can get back to some sort of normal very, very soon. But anyway, and then my friends and even my family that is still being affected by the last hurricane a couple of weeks ago over in the eastern part of our state is where my family is, and lots of friends up in North Carolina and in that area. Just we're still praying for you guys. It's hopefully getting a little better each day for you, but don't think that we have forgot about you. Um, but tonight we're going to talk about models for a little while. So I hope that you guys have had a good week building models. If you've had any time, I've not had any time to build any myself, but I have had time. I've been. You saw I posted a couple of shorts recently on these new Montana kits, 350 scale Montana kits, and I've got a couple here. I'm going to show you in a little while. I've just kind of been getting them out, preparing them. And when I say preparing them, yes, to build them, because I want to do a build video kind of thing showing how the different versions of this kit, how they build, because they are definitely different. But first of all, I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to redo this room a little bit. I've had some long-term plans that I just haven't finished yet. This desk is going over here, and I've got a big work table right outside in the next room that's going to be my modeling bench, where I'm going to do build some of my models, because this thing back here is just not cutting it. Then again, I do have a 35th scale Dora sitting on it, and that may be my problem. I might need something smaller. But either way, going to have a bigger table. And with a bigger table means I can build bigger stuff. And a 350 scale Montana is certainly big. But the first thing before I get into building them that I want to do is just show you guys the difference in these three kits. And when I say three kits, I'm talking about the Verifier 350 scale plastic kit, the new Trumpeter 350 scale plastic kit, and the original 350 scale resin kit that Yankee Model Works produced. And they're all different, and it's very cool to see three different versions of something that never even existed anyway. So my definition of what's correct may not be your definition of what's correct, because the blueprints versus the original concepts versus what most likely would have actually happened had it been built, it's all up for debate, and it's all fun. And at the end of the day, it's your model, or in this case, these are my models. So I'm going to build them how I want, and I'm going to build all three of them slightly different. Anyway, we'll look at those in a few minutes. Let's jump over here in the chat and say hello to everybody, as I always like to do. Joseph, good to see you, and Danny. And let's see, Danny's asking about the Dragon destroyers. So they are there are three new destroyers coming, another version of the gearing. I should know these things off the top of my head, but sometimes I just don't. Let's take a look real quick. They are all in a container that was originally supposed to be here pretty quick. But thanks to the port strike that happened, even though the port strike didn't last very long, every day that they don't work backs them up more than one day, if you can imagine. So our latest date of arrival, or estimated date of arrival on this container, is about 2 weeks. So hopefully there's no more delays, and hopefully I was worried that it was going to be delayed all the way into November, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So hopefully 2 weeks will be it. But these are the three destroyers that are going to finally be here. The another gearing class DD 805. um, the Benson, the 1945 version of the Benson class, and then another Gleaves class, DD 429, the Livermore. So those will be here in just a couple of weeks, finally. And if you're looking on the screen and you're wondering about this guy, we are still waiting on final confirmation from Dragon on this, and I'm very excited about it. But it looks like it's still going to be a little ways out, unfortunately. Uh, Anyway, there you go, Danny. Just a couple more weeks and we will be able to get those to you. Let's see. Who else do we have in here tonight? Bear with me. It's hot in here tonight. All right, let's see. And David is with us tonight. And yes, sir, for sure. Let's all please do remember everybody affected by the last hurricane and the ones currently being affected right this moment and later tonight. For sure. Your prayers are certainly with us here at the Squadron team. Let's see. Hey, Ken, good to see you tonight. And Jason, good to see you. And Rex is here. Greg is here. And Wes coming to us down from Central Florida. Buddy, you stay safe tonight, man. I hope everything, you and yours, are safe. Let's see. And Lee wants to know about building resin kits. So we'll jump into that in just a couple of minutes, Lee. Let me finish saying hello to everybody. And we'll talk about it, because talking about those Yankee kits, it's one of the biggest resin ship models that you could ever have bought, at least 350 scale. And they're cool, and they're relatively easy to build, but we'll jump into it in a little while. I see a lot of answers already in the chat for you. Wes says using super glue, or CA glue. And he's not wrong. This stuff is like my favorite glue, but it absolutely will not work for resin. Don't even try it. Oh, man. Michael, good to see you tonight, buddy. And Ed, good to see you. Let's see. And Tom coming to us from Florida tonight. Hope you're doing all right tonight, buddy. Hope you stay safe. Let's see. Lawn Care Novice is here. Good to see you. And Carlos. Derek, also praying for you guys down in Florida tonight. Good deal. Bill, do I have any updates on the Trumpeter 200 scale kit? Buddy, you will have to put in the chat again. Tell me which kit you're talking about specifically. And I know the only one that I know that's coming at the moment is the 200 scale Olympic from them. And it is supposed to be here, I hope, by the end of the year. It may roll over to the beginning of next year. But pulling this page up, I also forgot, you may be talking about the 200 scale Fletcher class. And those are definitely going to be next year, hopefully early next year. I don't know, first or second quarter. But those will definitely not be here by the end of this year. They're still in development, trying to work out some things to make it a really good and accurate kit. So we won't see those in 24, but we should see them in 25 for sure. Let's see, Chip, good to see you tonight, buddy, down in Florida. Hope you stay safe this evening and tomorrow, of course. Let's see, the Deranged War Tomato, good to see you tonight. And Jeff coming to us out from Utah. Good to see you. And TD, hello, buddy. And Frank, all the way from Australia. Good to see you tonight, buddy. Or I guess for you, it's today. So good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. Michael is here. Hey, buddy. I might have already. Sometimes I scroll through here and I say hey to you twice. So if I do, hey to you twice. But see, your sister lives down in Florida. Hope she stays safe tonight. Let's see. Hey, Jim, good to see you tonight, buddy. And Lee. And Philip, you'd like a catalog. Well, we gave out of the last of our, well, I guess what I was calling our current catalog, this one. But I guess it is no longer our current catalog. It is our previous catalog. And our new one, the next issue, will be available at the beginning of the year. I don't have an exact date yet. Trying to get those finished up. But if you go on our website, and right here on the front page, over here on the left where it says cover art coming soon, click that. Drop your email over here in this box, and sign up for the notification when this becomes available. And what that will do is, first of all, let us know that you're interested in one. And when we get it ready, everybody that signs up for that little newsletter, we're going to send you a special promo. And you'll get it a little bit cheaper than everybody else, because it is something that we're going to sell. We don't give those away, because you can imagine how expensive something this big is, not just to print, but shipping. They won't let us ship them in a media mail, because it's technically advertising. So we have to pay the regular ground advantage, as they call it now, price for a between 4 and 5 pound package, basically. So they're pretty expensive just in shipping. But we like doing them, and I hope you guys enjoy them. We've got more information on on what I'm not even going to tell you about coming soon. But we've got another, what we think is going to be a fun way for you to get the new catalog. We've been working on something that we will announce soon. We're still trying to nail down what we're going to call this this fun thing. But more information on that coming soon. But part of this fun thing is going to be getting a free catalog. So, but like everything costs, right? Nothing's really free. Is that true? But it's going to be fun. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. So stay tuned for all that. And Charles is here. Nice to see you tonight. And Frank, David's with us. Let's see. And David Miller had some snow on Monday. We have definitely not had that. It's still hot down here. And howdy to you too, Mark. Good to see you tonight. Thanks for the picture of all the hot sauce earlier this week. You got my mouth sweating. Good to see you tonight, Kimberly. And Robert's with us tonight. Good to see you. And John made it in here. Good to see you tonight, buddy. Yeah, sorry about that poster that we were talking about earlier. The post office. You can't trust the post office these days. They can destroy anything. I think I could probably ship you a square of steel, and they would figure out how to crush it and destroy it. It's terrible, but we got you covered, buddy. Kenneth, Kenneth Wade, good to see you tonight. And Ed coming to us up here from our neck of the woods, and Kenny over in Beeville, I guess Blairsville. That really was our neck of the woods not too terribly long ago. Good to see you tonight, John. Or excuse me, David. Where did I get John from? There must have been another John right there, and it disappeared. Well, John, if you're in here, good to see you tonight. Let's see. David's with us. We got everybody in here tonight. Well, I appreciate everybody being in here. I'm going to go ahead and skip down and see what kind of topics we can get into tonight. Jason, do my plans involve finishing the Dora anytime soon? The plans in my mind include finishing the Dora anytime soon, but unfortunately, what's in my mind and reality have not really lined up much lately in the in the ability to finish a model kit. We've been moving this moving to our new warehouse. I probably naively thought that it was going to be easy, or maybe not easy, but quick. Yeah, it was terrible, and it took way longer than we anticipated. But it's going to be worth it in the end. But pretty much took the better half of this year for me, and not just the moving the warehouse, but uprooting my whole family and moving. Moving into a new house that had to be renovated to some degree, which I'm still working on. You know, I don't get to paint little models because I'm painting bathrooms and bedrooms and things, but that'll be finished sometime in the near future, I hope. And then maybe I'll be able to get on the models. But seriously, what I was talking about earlier, not having enough space over here on this table to build the door, sometime earlier, or this past weekend, I was over there and I thought, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes just trying to do something on the Dora, because a couple of weeks ago I got everything out, found everything, so I can start working on it again. So this past weekend I was gonna do something. There's no space on this little table, and it's not really a little table, but this is just a huge model. If you've ever built the Dora, you know how much space it takes just to spread some of the sprues out. If you saw the video that I did, it's been a while now, but there in our YouTube channel, I did a video, an unboxing video of the Dora. And this was at my old house. I spread all the sprues out in my living room. It took up my whole living room just to spread the kit out. So it it's another one of those things that I thought was going to be quick and easy, and it's not necessarily hard. The hard part is spreading the sprues out and finding the part you need. When the instructions say you need sprue, I don't know, R10. I mean, how many kits have an R sprue? So you got to fish through all this stuff. So I'll get it one day, and one day when it's done, I'll be able to point over there and say, "Look, guys, I told you I could do it." But we'll see how it goes. All right, Brian, do I have any plans to carry Great Wall and Lion Roar? Funny you should ask. Yes, they are headed our way right now, and we should, fingers crossed, be getting. They're not on this container I was talking about. It'll be here in 2 weeks. This will be the next one that'll be here probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. Middle to end of November, probably. But we finally got them. Now this is Great Wall Hobby, which is the same company as Lion Roar, but they are not producing, at least from what they're telling me, they're not producing any of their photo etch anymore. So they used to be they have a real big line of primarily ship model photo etch, Lion Roar photo etch, 700 scale, 350 scale. And they had some armor stuff too, 35th scale. So they had a lot of stuff, but they are not doing their photo etch stuff, at least not currently. They're focusing all on their plastic kits, which is under the Great Wall Hobby line. But those kits are really nice. They've got an A10, a new A10. They've got a new F14, a new F15, 72 scale. They're just really, really nice. So I'm excited to be able to get those. That's one of those brands. If you've heard me mention it throughout the past year about we have a lot of new brands coming as soon as we get our bigger warehouse space. This was one of those. So we kind of already had it in line, so to speak. We were just waiting to get settled in, set up, and then it's just a matter of getting it on the slow boat from China, as they say. But those will definitely be here, and there we go. And if they do start doing the Lion Roar photo etch again, I'd love to get back on that, because back in the free time hobbies days, I really enjoyed carrying that. It was some nice stuff. Good to see you tonight, Tim. The deranged war tomato. Been buying stuff from Squadron since the early 70s. That's awesome. It's it's really interesting now that we're setting up the new retail store, if you will. It's the Squadron Museum, as you may have heard me call it. I've got this big collection of Squadron books, that I've got all the in-action books, the walk-around books, all that kind of stuff, and that's cool. I'm going to put those in there. not the old ones. They won't be for sale. They're just for you to see when you come by. But in addition to that, I've got a massive collection now, thanks to several of you guys and others, and some of my own personal collection. I've got a massive collection of old Squadron catalogs, flyers, just all the different marketing things that they've had through the years. And there's absolutely no way to know if I have them all, because there was never really a checklist or anything. I mean, anytime they printed up something for marketing to mail it out, or whatever they did with it, I mean, they weren't keeping track of how many postcards they made and that sort of thing. But I've got a ton of it, and I've been trying to organize it and sort it by, by year, by month. And my idea is, for if you come into our little Squadron museum, retail space, so to speak, you can go over there and you can go back and look, so, or tomato, you're talking about buying stuff from the early 70s. Well, you'll be able to come in, go over there to the old catalogs and grab that January 1970 catalog and see what was available back then. And as I've been going through these and looking at them, it's kind of funny, really, to see what was available way back then. And it's interesting because uh, of course, the biggest shock, it shouldn't be really a shock, but the biggest thing is the price of some of these kits, and like decals for a quarter, and just crazy pricing, right? Compared to now. But what's also interesting to me is some of the models that were available back then are the exact same ones that are still available now, like an old Tamiya kit. I mean, some of those Tamiya kits that were tooled up back in the 70s, there's nothing wrong with them. They're still good models, and they still offer the same thing now. So you can go through these catalogs and you can see how that exact same whatever Tamiya model was. Well, it was this much in 1975, this much in 1985, and it's it's kind of neat. So it's kind of like a trip down memory lane. And for me, this memory lane extends back to before I was even born. So it's really cool just to uh, see all of these catalogs and see all these flyers, and see how things have changed through the years in the model world. A lot of the catalogs, or a lot of the flyers, I don't remember right off the top of my head right now what years they were doing this, but they used to have the model of the year, and it was always the front cover of the magazine, and they had a little write up about it, and who knows what kind of requirement the kit needed to be Squadron's kit of the year. Maybe it was the one they sold the most of, or maybe it was the one that they had the most of in the warehouse and they needed to sell the most, so they called it the kit of the year. I don't know. But either way, it's really cool just to go back and see what the kit of the year was. And sometimes I think that would be cool to bring back. But the problem is, as I always say, now is a great time to be a modeler. There's too many candidates for the greatest kit of the year. I mean, it's like every month there's something new that's announced that's just going to be a home run. So I don't know. There we go. Yeah, you're right. To to clean my table, I should build the door. If I could just move it off of there, I'd have a big old table. Let's see. Good to see you tonight, Francos. Jim, uh, question about Dragon's ship model instructions. The I've never really had much trouble with their ship models, but I got to be honest with you, I've not built very many, if any, of their armor kits, so I can't really speak to that. But their destroyers, their 350 scale destroyers, I think their instructions are nice. It's that exploded view kind of instruction. I don't think I have one here to show you. Oh, I've got one of the gearings somewhere, but I think they're good or acceptable, if you will. But you know, everybody's different. Some people may hate them. So if anybody's got any different comments about Dragon's ship model instructions than I do, throw them in the chat because I've done I've done the 350. I don't know. I've done the 700 scale. Some of their older ones, like the Air. I know I did in Arizona, and one of the carriers, maybe the Essex or the Bonham Richard. I don't remember. I've done several of their 700 scale kits, and I built all those out of the box, and I didn't have any trouble with their instructions. This was a few years ago, so I don't know. Everybody has a little bit a different opinion about kit instructions. Some are better than others, of course, but for me, I didn't really have much issue with their 700 scale ships or like I said, the Gearing class destroyer looks good too. Let's see. Hey Jose, good to see you tonight. Is the warehouse all set up? No, it is. It is there. We are in, but we are still working on getting it set up. But we're getting there. We are getting there. Let's see. Good to see you tonight, Lady Knievel. The 700 scale Queen Elizabeth carrier kit from Trumpeter. I don't know when that one is due. Let's see. I'm looking real quick to see if I've got any updated information on it, and I don't know. It's still just in there coming soon. So hopefully we'll know a little bit more about that soon. Hey, Tim. No problem, buddy. Glad I could help. And good to see you tonight, too, by the way. Robert, on Tamiya's new Panzer, I don't. I know that we've got a shipment coming, but sometimes with Tamiya, I never really know what's in my shipments until they get here. It's one of those brands that we have stuff coming from them all the time so often that sometimes I can't keep track. So if you want to shoot me an email this evening or in the morning, I can. I've got more information that I can access at the shop than I do here at the house. Some things I can find here, but that particular, I know I've got them on order, but we just got to see where they are. So if you want to get with me in an email, I can check it out. Let's see. Michael, we should call the catalog the Squadron reference. You know, the first one we did, I well, the front of it says catalog, but we were trying to call it a product guide, and we thought reference guide. We've thrown all these things around, but I think this time I'm just going to call it the catalog because that's what everybody calls it anyway. When people call up and want to buy one, hey, let me buy the catalog, or if I need to offer, well, hey, would you like to get a catalog? So I don't know. It's a good name because that's what it is. It's the product guide. It's the reference guide. It's we could call it a lot of things, but I think I'm just going to go with catalog this time. Either way, it's going to be good. Let's see. Jason talking about getting some Gundam things that take too long to get here. Jason, one of these days, I'm going to surprise the heck out of you, and you're going to see some Gundam stuff at Squadron. And then you're just going to have to come down for a visit. And speaking of visiting, I guess I walked into this trap. I don't know if I'm going to get to come up there to the show next month or not. I really want to, but November and December is just crazy busy for us. And for me to skip town on a weekend may or may not be possible, but I would like to. I'm not saying no, but I'm really going to have to pull some strings to work out being able to come up there. I'd love to come check out the show, though. I say it every year that I'd like to go. It just time is not plentiful enough around here for me. This Dora is, I've got to finish the Dora because it's going to be the running joke of this show until I do. The the Shelf of Doom. No, call it the Shelf of Dora. All right. All right. Well, you see it. Can't go wrong with a Tamiya kit. All right. And speaking of drinks, so I got to show you this. These are finally coming soon. The Squadron coffee cup. Got a couple of different designs. This is the eagle, just plain, simple, clean, nice, black and white. Oh, got some candy in there. So those are coming soon. Very very cool. And this particular one, my mom actually made. So thank you, mother. Looks nice. We'll have those available sometime soon. And Lady Knievel, got into building busts. Well, sometimes people ask, is like, what kind of models do you build? What are you into? And models are models. You might have your favorite, but for me, I like ships, I like figures, but if it looks cool and the subject is interesting, it doesn't have to fit in my ship model collection. It can be anything. So glad you found something else that you like painting. So that's cool. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with. And Brian, all right, good deal. Yeah, so this first round of Great Wall that's coming in, it's not everything. We got to do it in waves. But this first batch that's coming is a lot of their U.S. aircraft subjects, and the two A-10s are definitely coming. So they got two different versions of that. So we'll have those. Yeah, Wes, got my Dolphins cup. I was looking for what cup I was going to use tonight, and all you guys down in Florida are on my mind tonight. So I thought my good old Dolphins cup would be appropriate. Glenn, hoping we will open a brick and mortar store. Well, you will get your wish sometime in the next couple of months. We've been trying to set up paint racks for the last week or so. And I don't have the picture with me. I should, but one of my guys, real good employee. Uh, he's so good that we're able to give him a hard time. So he he was rolling one of our Vallejo racks into the store, and and it's the big Vallejo rack. That's the model color, the main rack that's got I don't know how many hundreds of paint bottles in it. And unfortunately for him, the one of the wheels broke off. The whole rack hit the floor, and bottles of paint went everywhere. Now, thankfully, Vallejo bottles, they're plastic, so nothing busted, and it didn't make a big mess. Other than he had just got done putting all these paints in the rack. I mean, it took him however long it took him to put everything in and organize it, and it all hit the floor. He had to pick it all up and organize it again. So it was pretty terrible for him, but we gave him a hard time every time we walked by. But hard time in fun. It was no trouble because thankfully the store is not open yet, so nobody was in there. Uh, but it's gonna be good. Oh, all right. Here, let's see. Oh, and I guess okay. I see where it was now. Remember, so here's a picture that uh, Russ just sent me as he heard me telling this. So here's the picture. Now let's see if I can remember how to open it. Ben's going to kill me for showing this. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. This was about, I don't know, he had already started cleaning up by the time I figured it out. So he was coming from around that back corner, and he was headed this way because where I'm standing, if you were to look to the right, you would be looking into the what's going to be our storefront. And he came around that corner, and his wheel, and you see his foot sitting under where the wheel was, so he could put all the stuff back. Oh, it was bad. So yeah, that's what a full rack of Vallejo paint looks like, all in a big pile. If you were ever wondering, for whatever reason you might be wondering. Oh man. All right. War Tomato, how much would it cost for a company like us or like anybody to produce a new model from scratch? You know, this is actually a question, if you don't mind, this is a question for another night, because I actually have, as we finally finish getting set up over here, I have some more. I want to get my history of the hobby interview videos going again, and I actually have a couple of guys that actually work at factories that actually produce these things that are going to come on the show with me, and we're actually going to talk about this, and it'll be in broad terms. You know, nobody wants to give away their company secrets on exactly how much things cost, but I'll tell you that it's not cheap. These molds that are made for these plastic models, they're very expensive. So it's there's a lot that goes into it. The design and the design and development, of course, takes time. It takes money. You got to pay your designers. You got to pay your researchers. Um, the guys over in China that make this stuff, you know, their researchers a lot of times are over here because we've got access to blueprints and plans and things. So there's a lot that go into it before you ever even get to the cutting the metal, so to speak. But once you get to that part, that's, you know, you start dropping some real money real fast. So we'll get into that on a different night, because like I said, I've got some guys that are willing to talk a little bit about that are a lot more knowledgeable than me, that can give a little bit better answer for that. So that'll be coming sometime down the line. Let's see. David Miller, I see your comment there, buddy. I won't pull it up on the screen, but I appreciate your kind words there. Um, Let me jump into this Montana real quick before I forget. So, and this goes back to that original question about building resin, and I forget who it was that was asking about that, so I apologize. So, the the biggest thing, as several of the guys in the chat already mentioned, about building resin kits versus plastic is the fact that with a plastic kit, you can use something like, my camera's freaking out on me. You can use something like, my favorite to me is extra thin cement. And this glue, as we call it, is actually not glue. I mean, it's not glue at all. I mean, you can't, it's not sticky. It won't do anything. So, and a lot of you guys know this, but you say, well, if it doesn't stick to anything, what's it good for? Why is it glue? Well, it's actually not really glue. What it does, it creates I guess some, you know, if I was a science teacher, maybe I could explain it better, but it's a chemical reaction with the plastic that actually it basically just melts the plastic together. So when you have two pieces of plastic and you put this on here, it's not actually gluing it, it's melting it together. There was a brand one time, I forget, but they called theirs plastic welder, because basically it's welding the two pieces of plastic together by melting the pieces of plastic together. So because resin is not the same as plastic, styrene plastic is what this kind of glue or cement works best on, because there's a couple of different types of plastic too. If you've ever had a kit where the plastic is really, really, really hard, you might find that this kind of glue, this thin cement, doesn't work very good, because there's, like I said, there are 2 or 3 different types of plastic that these manufacturers use. Most of them are like, this is the trumpeter uh, Montana kit. Most kits are like this. It's a soft plastic, like a styrene. If you've ever used evergreen strips, it's the same type of thing. It may not technically be the same, but that type of plastic. They've got different ones when they're putting them in the molds, which we'll get into in that future video of how these things are produced. I was talking about, they've got little different ways of doing it. They've got little beads of plastic that go in and they melt and they shoot them in. Different ways of doing it. But regardless, resin is different. Resin. They are made in a very, very, very low production mold. So this is the lights are bright. This is the Yankee Model Works 350 scale Montana. Now, this particular one happens to be the Blue Ridge Models version. So when we bought Yankee Model Works back in, I think, 2011, 11 or 12, we rebranded all of those kits as Blue Ridge models, but we made some changes to them. But the hulls themselves, this hull is identical to the Yankee Model Works. The only difference in this versus the Yankee kit is the fact that these are gray because we tinted the resin, versus the original Yankee kits did not tint the resin, so it came out a yellowish creamy color. You've seen it if you've built resin kits before. You know the color I'm talking about. But these resin kits are made in these extremely low production molds. Now, if you cast resin, you might have your own process. You may get 100 pulls out of your molds. But for us, doing these large ships and doing some of the other things we do, we've always kind of assumed that we would get somewhere between 30 and 35 pulls out of a mold. Sometimes you get 50, sometimes you get 60. Sometimes your mold rips after the 10th pull. You never know. But you kind of get an average. So when you make, I think this particular set of molds back, because we only made 2 sets of molds for this ever. And out of the 2 sets of molds that we were able to make, I remember we were able to get around 50 kits total out of 2 molds. And that in and of itself right there is why resin kits cost so much. This kit back in the day sold for $550. And you're like, wow, why does it cost so much? Well, a set of molds for this thing was, oh, I forget the exact number, but it was over $1,000 to make the mold for this. And when you only get 25 to 30 pulls out of it, it starts adding up quick. And that's not the only thing. Then you've got the photo etch, you've got all this other stuff that's included. And don't forget about the research and development that took place prior that Yankee Model Works did. Of course, I had nothing to do with that. They did all that. But there's a lot that goes into these things. So you might say, why would you buy a resin kit? Well, it's a lot different today than it was years ago. Years ago, when Yankee created this kit, you could not get a what if battleship any other way than resin. You know, back then, we at Free Time Hobbies, we sold Yankee kits, and we sold these pretty good. The Blue Ridge one, I told you we made 50 of those, but prior to owning the Yankee Model Works line, we were a dealer for Yankee. This was one of the best kits that we sold. This one, the Alaska, USS Alaska battle cruiser, and that was a very good kit. It was expensive, but it was a very good selling kit. And the reason is because back then there was this idea that ships like this, especially the Montana, you would never see them in a plastic model kit. And the reason being is, why would a company, and this is going to tie into this future video I'm talking about, why would a company like Trumpeter, like Tamiya, like whoever, why would they invest in such an obscure ship? Now, to me, it's not obscure. To me, it's awesome. It's cool. I like it. It's one of my favorite ships, even though it never existed. I just like the idea of what if it had happened, right? But for a company like Trumpeter to invest the not just the time to make this, but also the tooling, the metal, the molding, all that, why would they invest that in something that it's not a Titanic. It's not a Missouri. It's not an Arizona. Arizona. Hint, hint. Trumpeter, please. Anyway, it's not one of those big ships. So we always had this idea that, oh, yeah, that's one of those you'll never see in plastic. The Alaska was something you'd never see in plastic. Why? Because it was only one. Well, there were two, the Alaska and the Guam, but they were identical. So they can't make different versions. When they make, I don't know, when you make the B-17, how many different variants of that can you do? How many different variants of a Mustang can you do? And even in the ships, you do a Fletcher destroyer, you do one of these other cruisers, one of these other battleships. There's several different versions, so you can get a lot more marketing dollar out of a set of molds, because the big money is the hull. Then all the superstructure. Think of the Big Five: the West Virginia class and the Tennessee class. They're very, 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 very similar. They can do a Tennessee and a California. They can do a West Virginia and a Maryland. The whole, all that stuff's the same. Few different changes on a superstructure, different turrets. It's nothing to do a different sprue for a different set of turrets, as long as they can use the same hull, even with minor changes. Because nowadays, with your slide mold technology and all that, you can make little changes. So anyway, back then, there was this idea that you would never see some of these ships. Well, as time went on, companies like Trumpeter started producing more and more 350 scale ships, because the first 350 scale ships, if you go way back, Tamiya did some 350 scale ships. They're Yamato, they had Bismarck, they had the Missouri, they had several, King George V, they had several battleship kits that were from years and years and years ago. So back in the 90s, and even maybe a little bit before, but through the 90s, you had Yankee Model Works. They were more in the early 2000s. Before them, the company was known that you had Blue Water Navy, you had Classic Warships. Back then, there was Tom's Model Works, that we now know as a photo etch company. But back when they first started, they had 350 scale ships. Commander models and Iron Shipwrights. You had Gulfstream. You had all these companies making 350th scale ship models. And outside of Tamiya, that was pretty much it for 350 scale ships. And you had a very, very big selection of what was available. Well, fast forward to around 2005, somewhere in that ballpark, 2003, 4, 5, Trumpeter comes along and they start producing 350 scale ships. Some of the first ones, some of their aircraft carriers. And then all of a sudden, this idea of, these ships will never be done in plastic, all of a sudden that idea starts changing a little bit, because you start seeing these. Well, they do things that kind of makes sense to do, right? Essex class carriers, you can't go wrong with that. How many of them can you make? They start doing all these. So then there's still this idea that Montana, Alaska, some of these unicorns will never be done in plastic. So when we got started at Free Time Hobbies in 2006, we were immediately Yankee Model Works was immediately one of our big brands because there were still a lot of ships that they produced that still fell under this idea that these are never going to be made in plastic. And Montana was one of those. Well, fast forward to, I guess it was 2012 or somewhere in there when we bought Yankee Model Works. And a year or two, couple years later, Verifier Models comes on the scene. Well, I met the guy Verifier early on. He kind of at the time, and hopefully still now to some extent. At the time, we Free Time Hobbies, we were the ship guys. We had just recently purchased Bill Gruner's company, Pacific Front Models, who he definitely was the ship guy. And so now we were kind of known as the ship place. And the Verifier guy, he contacted me, and we got to know each other, and we started selling his stuff. And it did well. He was doing some very interesting things, uh, picking off some of those Yankee Model Works line, which didn't really bother me at the time. It doesn't bother me now either, but it didn't bother me because we had a good relationship with him. So I knew that I may be able to sell 2 or 3 dozen of whatever of the Yankee Model Works version that year. But if he comes out in it with it in plastic, I might can sell 2 or 300 instead of 2 or 3 dozen, or maybe more. Who knows? So I took the approach of helping him instead of fighting against him. I had plans. I had a little bit of knowledge, and what I didn't know, I had friends and buddies that could help. So one day he asked. He says, "Well, what would you like to see us produce?" And I said, "I'll tell you what I want. I want a 350th scale plastic Montana." And he basically laughed me out of the conversation because, again, this idea of things that never can happen in plastic, when you look at it from a manufacturer's point of view, it's a risky move. That's why the resin kits that still exist today, and there are a good handful of them, most of those resin kits that are still popular and still being produced, they're things that, for whatever reason, have not been done in plastic and haven't really even been mentioned. Now, a lot of this 350 scale ships are a little bit more rare in resin now, but in the 700 scale world, companies like Nico, AJM models, you've got some really uh, obscure ship subjects that are nice subjects. They're just things that some of the stuff they come out with, I don't even know what they are. I've got to look them up, which is fun for me. I get to learn about new subjects. But so anyway, so he kind of laughed at the idea of doing a Montana, and he's thought it would be interesting and fun, but too expensive and too risky. We kept talking about it off and on, and somehow or another, I finally said, "Look, how many of them do I have to commit to purchasing to convince you that this is a good idea?" And I honestly don't remember what the number was, but back back then when Russ, my dad, uh, I don't remember what the number was, but I remember when I told him, "Hey, I think we need to buy X amount of Montanas to get them to do this." Uh, I think he about fell out of his chair, and he probably thought I was crazy too. But we told Verifier, said, "Look, let's do this. Yes, we'll buy that many, but let's do it as a cross branded thing, and do it as a Verifier / Blue Ridge Models thing." And that lasted for a while. Let me grab this kit. That lasted for a while, but I don't think it's that way anymore. Yeah, it's not. This is one of the new boxings of it. But our Blue Ridge Models logo used to be on the box down here somewhere on the original box. They've gone. Verifire's gone through a lot of changes in ownership and all that since then. But it was we talked them into doing this, and it ended up being pretty successful. At least I thought. I hope that it was good for them. It was great for us. I hope that it was good for them, and the fact that they continued producing them, and they still produce it to this day, along with a lot of other kits. I got to believe that it was at least semi successful. But that started kind of a that really shook up the resin kit world, I guess. And prior to this, before this came out, I think it was before, maybe it wasn't. I forget. Trumpeter, well, actually, it was the Hobby Boss brand. They did 350 scale Alaska, and my camera's being really weird again. So those really kind of shook up the idea that my resin kit, I'm going to buy it because it's never going to come out in plastic. Because if a 350 scale Montana will come out in plastic, I'm convinced anything can come out in plastic. Now, before you blow up the chat with with your next unicorn that needs to come out in plastic, there's a lot that goes into it, and you do have to be able to sell them. But I really believed in the Montana, and I convinced them to do it. I think it worked out. So obviously, at that point, we discontinued our resin version, and they did it. Now, obviously, I'm not the only crazy guy in the world that thought a Montana was a good idea, because here we are 10 years later, and Trumpeter has just released a 350 Montana. And let's see, this is theirs. Now, all three of these are different, and not just from an accuracy point of view. And I will leave most of the and again, with a what if made up ship, it's not made up, it's blueprints. You know what I mean? Accuracy is your opinion, I guess we can say. But they all are three different. But I will leave that for my video review, because I'm going to pull up the blueprints and compare these kits to the blueprints. But outside of just accuracy, the kits are completely different the way you build them. So the original, if you will, the resin one, it is split at the waterline, which I kind of think is cool, because doing this as a waterline with a water, a diorama, fill it up with figures, it would look really cool, right? And then the lower hull is solid. This thing is heavy. This is the biggest chunk of resin that you've ever seen in a ship model, or at least that I've seen. Maybe you've got something bigger. Maybe if you have the the old 32 scale U-boat. But anyway, this is a chunk of resin. And going back to the question of building resin kits, and we've talked about using the glue now. The other difference and this is specific to ship models, there are other resin kits, figures and airplanes and whatnot. But you'll notice that on the deck, a lot of the deck clutter, if you will, is molded onto the deck. The gun shields, the davits, everything is on the deck. So in your plastic kit, the Verifier, the Trumpeter, whatever, you got sprues and sprues and sprues full of little things that you've got to attach to the deck. So compare that, for example, with gotta be careful. Those shields are very fragile. This is the resin deck. Compare that to the which one is this? This is the Verifier deck, and just look at all of the things that are molded onto the resin versus they're going to be on a sprue. You see all the little locator holes on the deck. Now, back in the day, this was state of the art, and for what it is, it's extremely nice. The casting is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it if you're really good at painting and masking. So back in the day, this was your only option for Montana. But for me, I really, 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 really like using wood decks. Some people hate them. If you hate them, then you are way better at painting wood to look realistic than I am. I'm terrible at it. So I really like using like Art Walk's wood decks. I love using those, and I love staining them because they're real wood. So you can stain them like real wood and you can make them look exactly how you want. I really like doing that. Now, on this resin Montana, back in the day before these plastic ones were available, we worked really close with Art Walks. He's become a really good friend of mine throughout the years, and we worked together, and we actually made a wood deck for this resin kit. And if you have one of these resin kits, unfortunately, no, those wood decks are not available anymore. But we made a few of those. I used one on the last. I built one of these resin kits several years ago. I used the wood deck. It's great. Problem is, using a wood deck on a resin kit like this is all of these things that are on here, they have to be punched out around this on the wood deck. It just makes it difficult. It's just difficult. Versus using one of these plastic decks and all of this stuff that gets glued in later, I get to paint that on the sprue, or at least in tweezers or however I choose to set up. I get to paint that separate, and my wood deck gets to lay down here, and then I get to apply all that stuff that's already pre-painted. It's a lot easier to do and apply wood decks and get all that deck clutter, as I keep calling it, painted than it is the resin kit. Now, that's just, from a building it perspective. But if you're going to hand paint anyway, or you're going to airbrush and you don't mind masking and all that, it doesn't really make a difference. You might appreciate the fact that a lot of this stuff is already molded on. The wood deck pattern itself on the trumpeter and the Verifier kit, if you've built any 350 scale kits from either one of these companies, you know what to expect. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. If, a lot of people will say that it's overscaled, and it probably is, but it's a good, or at least a decent representation of a wood pattern. The wood pattern on the resin kit, I would be willing to bet is not overscaled. It's extremely fine, very, very small. So if you're going to paint it, I prefer this. And if you're going to paint it up I have to go back. That wood deck that I used, it was a teak deck. If I were going to do like a camo pattern, the deck blue kind of thing, it doesn't matter because I'm going to put everything on and then airbrush it anyway. And this kind of wood deck pattern on a resin kit really, really works out well that way. Now, we talked about the difference in the decks, but on these three kits, the difference in how they did the hull itself. I mentioned the resin kit being full hull but split at the waterline, and I'm going to put it right here before I drop it. The Verifier kit is also split, but not at the waterline. This is split down the middle, which is not a problem because the only seam that you're going to get with this, I'm going to grab my nippers real quick. Hold on. Get my new handy dandy Squadron nippers here. And the only seam that you're going to get really is up under the bottom, and unless you're staring at the bottom of your ship model for some reason, that's not really going to be an issue. The other seam that runs across the front, it is a seam, it is there, but that's going to be relatively easy to fix up. So but then up on the top, you're not going to have any issues because that's where your deck is going to fall right into place. And I'm sorry my camera keeps going in and out of focus. a new camera is on my shopping list. But anyway, so that's how Verifier has done it. Now, if you wanted to do waterline on these, obviously you can saw these holes in half. You just got to do some measuring and be really good. I've done it. It's not any fun. I've not done one of these. I've done other ships. But they do these in full hole because just like in 700 scale, like most 700 scale guys build waterline. In 350 scale, it's the opposite. Most ships you see are built full hull on pedestals or whatever. You go to the IPMS contest, and that's a pretty good representation. You walk down the 700 scale line, everything's waterline. You walk down the 350 scale line, everything's full hull. There are exceptions. There's some really nice full hull 700 scale builders, and there are some pretty fantastic waterline 350 scale builders out there. But for the most part, that's why you see a lot of 350 scale ships done in full hull. Now, that one split down the middle, like I said. Let me jump over here in the chat because I see a lot of questions coming in. I will try to answer some of them here in just a moment. Yeah, lots of questions. Okay. The trumpeter kit, however, just from how they tooled it up, this hull is one piece. No seams anywhere, one piece. Now, again, you start looking at these and you can see some differences in the way that they've designed the sides, the armor plates, the bulges, all that. So I'm not getting into the accuracy on this video. I'm just showing how these hulls are done. So between these two hulls, if I'm going to build this in full hull, I hate to say I'm going with the trumpeter on this one because it's one piece. I mean, the Verifier is really not a problem because, again, that front and back seam is going to be so easy to get rid of. I almost shouldn't even mention it, right? But still, it's there, and it's one more thing to have to take care of in an already long project. But you can see it's going to come together pretty good. That locator pin that's in there, I would probably cut that out so it fits together even a little bit more close. But the front seam is not going to be a problem. The back seam, let me get it put together. Let's see, the back seam, it fits together pretty good. I mean, so it's not really going to be a problem, but it's still something that's going to have to be addressed and worked on. With the trumpeter, it's one piece. There is no front seam. There is no back seam. So that's kind of nice. The decks, of course, the resin kit, the deck it's all built onto the hull. The Verifier deck comes in two pieces, so it's split right there. But again, that seam, the only place you're even going to see that seam is out here all the way where the deck pattern is. Everything else is covered up with superstructure and guns and everything else. So the fact that the deck is two pieces, not a problem. But again, trumpeter comes in with a one-piece hull, or no, one-piece deck. And you know, trumpeter, they kind of got it going on in the we're able to produce whatever we want kind of contest. I mean, the fact that they do one-piece hulls for 200 scale ships shows us that they have big equipment, big machines. The reason that a company like Verifier might choose to do something like this in two pieces is, you know, their equipment. Maybe it's better for them to do this in two pieces, and there's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's just if I have both, I'm going to build both of these, but if I were going to only build one, it's like, well, dang, do I want a one-piece hull or a two-piece? But you can't make your decision solely on that, because wait till we get into the rest of the kit. There's there's pros and cons all the way up the superstructure, all the way to the top of these kits, and I'll get into those another night. But that's just a little a little taste of the complete difference in two plastic companies doing a ship versus the original resin company. So it'll be interesting to show you guys the rest of how these were done. The all the way back to the original Yankee one. Again, at the time the kit was made, it was state of the art and it was awesome. But the original, if you've got any original Yankee kits, the white metal, the little pewter or whatever kind of metal those were, the little soft metal parts that were in that, man, compare compare those little white metal 40 millimeter guns to say the veteran models 40 millimeter guns or some of these new 3D printed things. It's pretty crazy. All right. Yeah. The other big thing, the other big difference in resin kits versus plastic kits is we know what plastic kit boxes look like. They're usually nice big boxes with pretty pictures on them. The majority of resin kits, this is what you get. Just a big white box. Now, we did start doing a little bit fancy artwork, at least for a resin kit. So this was what we did. Now, this particular boxing of it is the one that we called the USS Ohio, and we swapped out the 16-inch guns for 18-inch guns. So we were just having a little bit of fun with it. But the Blue Ridge model's name, we came up with that. I saw somebody asked about that in the chat here. We came up with that name because that was the town that we lived in at the time, Blue Ridge, Georgia. Let's see. Oh, hey Chris, good to see you tonight. Talking about hull fit, I think that's what Ed was talking about too. That that was one of the other things that resin kits with plastic kits, you've got that steel mold, or they've got other materials that they can make molds out of too, but you got this big metal mold. Every one of those that comes out of that thing is going to be identical or pretty dang close to identical. With resin, every single one of them has the opportunity to be different because they're coming out of rubber molds, and they're they can be close, but you have, as you're doing these, you're literally pouring these molds by hand, and you have a lot of opportunity to mess up. Now, the guys that do this for a living and do it as a main hobby, they're really good at it and they don't mess up a lot. But you have the opportunity to for that rubber mold, especially something as long as this kit. If you don't have that mold sitting straight, if the end of it is turned just a little bit, it's going to cure just a little bit turned. Now, there's ways to do this. They build boxes and whatever to make them as close to the same every time. Uh, but it was not uncommon back in the heyday of resin ship models to have a banana. And it wasn't just because of the way they were being produced at the factory. And I say factory. Another term for resin kits is garage kits, and that term comes from the fact that a lot of times these kits are produced in garages or basements or little shops, because a lot of times it would be a kind of a hobby or a side job or whatever. But a lot of times these bananas, so to speak, uh, would not be because of how the caster did it, but after it came out, if it sits in the back of a UPS truck out in the middle of Arizona, it's going to warp. And a lot of times, what would happen is, especially when you had these two-piece hulls like this one, let's see, this one lines up pretty good. But I'm going to take the back of it here, and I'm gonna pull it down, and I'm gonna hold it tight See there, I'm going to hold it tight so it's in place. And I'm not going to hold the front. We'll come around to the front. You see how much it's raised. It's because this is a banana. And now I can this one's not bad. I mean, I can take it and with a little bit of pressure, I can put it down. So when I get ready to build this, I'm probably going to drill out the inside of it on both sides. I'm probably going to put some screws in it and have a lot of epoxy on hand, and I'm going to make it work. But a lot of times you would get these things and you'd put it on there and you'd have a gap like this, and it would be bowed. And you can do some things, you can heat them up. There's some ways to fix it and help it. But then sometimes you would get them and it would be off this way. And this is over exaggerated, but you'd have them this way. And that was a lot more difficult to fix because then you're trying to pull it back this way without the other end shifting. So you would get a lot of issues like that. In some of the earlier kits, I remember some of the earlier Yankee kits. This one here is nice and smooth on the bottom, but the way that some of the earlier resin kits, they had these humongous casting plugs on the bottom, and they were a nightmare because you would have to sand them off or cut them off, sand them off, drag them behind your truck, whatever it took to get these huge casting plugs off. And I'm pretty sure most of the companies that are still doing resin kits, they've all gone away from that. So you get some nice fitting parts together. But um, the early resin kits were really in the day they were really nice, but for what we have now, not just with plastic, but with 3D printed resin and modern resin casters that do a really good job with this stuff. It's kind of funny now to pull out some of the old resin kits in the stash and look at them, and you're just like, wow. It's kind of like old movies or video games or whatever. Back in the day, I remember when I was a kid, I thought, Mario, I thought he looked real. He don't look real. And in the movies too, you keep getting, you had blue DVDs and they looked real, and then Blu-rays, oh, they look real. Now you got HD this and ultra this and whatnot, and the resin chips are kind of the same way. They used to be really, really good. And they're still really, really good, but the ones that we used to think were really good, we look at them now and you're like, wow, they've come a long way. So it's just interesting, and we'll leave it at interesting, at least for now. Oh man, Michael says he builds 700 full hull. Well, good. There's some good. There's a I've started to see more and more full hull show up in 700 scale. Like going back to Trumpeter again, they've started including more and more lower hulls in their kits. So it's a good thing. You can display them on pedestals or whatever, however you like to display them, and get the whole 9 yards, but take up a lot less footprint than a big old 350 thing. So, Lee, you did not miss the answer for the good adhesive and glue, because I took your question and I went in a totally different direction, and I apologize about that. The there This is what I use. Everybody else has probably got their opinion on what they use, but this is what I use, and I use two different things. One, I use CA glue, which is short for cyanoacrylic glue, which is a fancy way of saying super glue. Now, in the hobby world, we have different viscosities or thicknesses of CA glue, and I find myself I have three in my workbench. They have probably 1,000, but I keep what usually is called as a thin, a medium, and a thick. And I find myself using the medium CA glue about 95% of the time. And besides that, I use there's a company called Gator Grip. owned by a guy named Kenny Loop, and he makes something called Gator Grip Glue, and he has it in an original blend and a thin blend, and you can't go wrong with them. They do not dry as quickly as super glue, but they dry clear, and they're excellent for very, 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 very small parts. Because the problem with super glue is if you're dealing with extremely small parts, it's very easy to get too much glue, and you can glob it up. You can stick your little photo etch pieces to your fingers. And I mentioned photo etch because if you're building resin kits, you're probably going to have photo etch parts. But the Gator Grip is excellent for photo etch in small parts. Uh, a lot of times, what I'll end up doing, because the Gator Grip, it sometimes can be a little aggravating how long it takes to dry. So, like if I'm doing handrails, for example, I may take a little bit of my super glue on a Q-tip, or not a Q-tip, oh man, a toothpick. And I might put a dab of super glue at one end of my rails just to get them to stand up, and then I'll take that Gator Grip and use it for the rest of my run of rails. So I use CA glue and Gator Grip, and I use them together in the same build, and that works for me. So uh, you can try that and see what you think. Oh, looky there. Chris says Gator Grip as well. So, all right, Lady Knievel, I see you're leaving. Good to see you tonight. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening, and we're going to bring this to an end here in just a moment anyway. Let's see. Yeah. You can water down the thicker Gatorade glue. Yeah, the thin stuff is just it's the same. It's the same as the original. It's just pre-watered down, pre-thinned. Uh, just whatever. But if you only have the original stuff, and sometimes if that stuff starts getting older, it'll start thickening up a little bit, and you can put some water in there and thin it back down to whatever thickness you need. So, um, I guess that's gonna be about it tonight, guys. I appreciate it. Uh, I'm really looking forward to these Montana builds. I built the last Montana. I don't know why I like the Montana kit so much, but the last one I did was the Yankee version that I showed a couple months ago on the show and tell, and it was really cool. So I'm looking forward to building that kit again. Um, I hope that my building skills have improved a little bit since then. So the only thing that I'm not looking forward to is building the 20 millimeter guns again, because I intend to do it the same way I did the first time, which is the master models versions of the 20s, and they are oh gosh, they they look so good, but they are such a pain to build. So I don't know. I'll be getting into that as soon as I can. So I got to get this door out of my way first. So we'll see how that goes. Robert, we do sell Gator Grip, absolutely. Um, Let me show you where it is on the website real quick. And this is another thing that I'm going to do sometime. People ask me all the time. I get emails about how to use our website. So I think I'm going to do a video of how to use our website. So if I were going to find the Gator Grip, I would probably just search for it. But sometimes in the search box, less is more. So here we go. Here I'm out of the original right now. I've only got a couple bottles of the thin, but we've got another batch of it on the way that we'll have soon. But this is it. That's what it looks like. It comes in a little squeeze bottle with a spinny cap on the top. That's the original, and this is the thin blend. And it works really good. And as far as CA glue goes, we do not have any at the moment, but we will very soon have that. That's another one of those things that we've kind of been waiting to get our new shop set up, so we can get ourselves covered up in all the tools and glues and paints and things that you need. So we'll have all that sometime soon. Tim, the sprue cutters, which are the best? So it really depends on what you're doing, because honestly, they're all good, and we we kind of did a 3-pack. We kind of built them to work together. Now, if you come in here on the website to the sprue cutters, my buddy over at the Midwest Model Shop, him and his wife did a review on these, and I think they did a really good job kind of explaining the difference in them. He basically goes through and hands them to his wife, who builds models too, and she had never used them. And he said, "Just tell me what you like, what you don't like." And they compared them against a couple other brands, and so they can give you a more in depth answer to this question. But in general, this red one, it's only good for treating it horrible. I mean, use it to cut stuff, and it doesn't matter if you break it. You just use that. I call it the rough cut, and that's just to cut big parts out of the sprue, and cutting big chunks of resin, things that don't require any kind of delicacy. And that's what the red ones are for. That's why I call them the rough cut. Then the yellow ones, I call those the precision sprue cutters, because that's what I'm using all the time. That's just your basic. They're really good. They do a really good job cutting. They leave minimal cleanup, but that's kind of your standard good set of cutters. They're really nice. And then the black ones, I call these the high precision, because the blade, both of these are single-sided blades. They're like a guillotine. They don't pinch the parts off. They actually slice through them. And the black one, the blade side, the sharp side, is really, 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 really thin. And the reason is so it can cut really small parts. So you don't want to use this for big stuff, because it's going to dull a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to break. So doing 350 scale, 40 millimeter quads, 20 millimeter goes, even 700 scale radars, that kind of stuff really, really works well. So again, if you are only going to buy one, I'd say buy the yellow ones, which they're all available separately. I mean, if you only wanted one, that's the one to get. But if you wanted kind of, we designed them to be a set to be used together, you can't go wrong with it. But if you were just going to get one, I would say get the yellow one, because the black ones, you're going to wear them out a lot quicker, and the red ones, you're not going to be happy with those for cutting out parts for a nice finish. So there's my 2 cents on that, and hopefully you can try them out and see what you think too. So all right, well guys, I appreciate it. We are going to call it an evening for tonight, and we'll be back here next Wednesday night at 9:00, as we always are. And again, to all of my buddies down in Florida, please stay safe, and we'll be praying for you. And same to all my buddies and my family over east of us in East Georgia and North Carolina, South Carolina, wherever you guys are tonight. We're praying for you. I appreciate you guys. Take it easy, and we'll see you next week.